Coming up here on Philadelphia 76ers. Now, we are going to take an early look at 4 players who Philadelphia could trade for this season in order to improve this roster. And going into this year, you're thinking Philadelphia's stacked. They don't need any new additions. Well, now they're one of the worst teams in the Eastern Conference and in the NBA, and they might need to make a move. Before we do that, if you want more Sixers coverage from myself and producer Chip, follow us on Instagram for daily updates on the Sixers. We're on IG at 76ers Now IG, so be sure to give us a follow. We know that Daryl Morey will be looking to make a move. He's very aggressive running basketball operations for Philadelphia, and he's always looking to improve his basketball team. Here's what Jake Fischer, NBA insider, had to say about Daryl Morey and the Philadelphia 76ers. He said, the team is still willing and able to put first-round picks on the table for players that they will then have to go into the second apron or re-sign next summer. I would still be mindful and considering the fact that Daryl Morey in particular, running this front office, has always said he does not look at his rosters as final come opening night. And there's plenty of optionality, especially come the trade deadline in February, to make some changes here. And so with that, we flip the page to 4 trade targets who Philadelphia could look to bring in order to bolster this team. Let's begin with Keegan Murray, forward Sacramento Kings, a player who I loved coming out of the draft, who I kind of looked at as a more athletic Al Horford, and I think he's been a really good player to start his career. Here's what John Hollinger had to say from The Athletic. Here's the Kings' dilemma. They're legitimately all in on Murray, but if he struggles to find his place in this crowded Sacramento offense, and if the Kings fail to take the step forward that is so crucial to their plans in the process, then the landscape could change a little bit. I agree with that. I think it would be idiotic for Sacramento to trade him away. He has made some strides early in his career. He's a legitimate player. This year, numbers are, not where I would expect them to be with the player that I know he can be and has been throughout his career. 13.8 points per game, 8 rebounds, 44.5% from the field, 30+% from 3. And you take a gander at his numbers the last 2 years, in his first 2 years in the NBA, as a rookie, what I loved was the shooting splits there. The shot translated to the next level from Iowa, 45% from the field, 41% from 3. The Kings really relied on him as a rookie for a team that took the Golden State Warriors to 7 games in that first-round playoff series before Steph Curry went nuclear in that deciding game. And then last year, his numbers went up. Points per game, rebounds per game. The field goal numbers went up just a tick there. The three-point numbers did go down, and now this year they've gone down a little bit more. But, of course, you have to keep in mind that the sample size is very small because we're in the early portion of the year. Here is a trade idea that we saw from SB Nation where the 76ers would receive Keegan Murray, and the Kings receive KJ Martin, Ricky Council, multiple draft picks. As far as players go, doesn't really move the needle. But what the Kings could demand and what they could like is multiple draft picks there. And Chip, as we know, Philadelphia has a few of those as you look into the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, Keegan Murray is going to be a player that would take a lot to trade for in terms of draft capital. He's still young. He's still very good. So I think you'd be giving up, obviously, that Clippers pick you have. They probably demand almost every tradable first-round pick the Sixers have. The thing with the Kings and why I don't think they would trade him, but the only reason they might consider it, they brought in DeMar DeRozan this offseason. And early on, Keegan Murray's kind of struggled to find his way in that offense. Obviously, his shooting splits are not what they were, especially his rookie year. And they're obviously already paying a De'Aaron Fox. They're now paying DeMar DeRozan. They paid Malik Monk in the offseason. They're paying Domantas Sabonis. Keegan Murray has this year, next year left on his rookie deal. After that, he'll be a restricted free agent. So do they want to pay Keegan Murray how much he's going to be asking for long term? I think they probably would, but as the season goes along, we get closer to the trade deadline. If it really just isn't working with him in that lineup with DeRozan there, they could make a move here where they say, all right, let's get a few picks from the Sixers in this deal and then use those to go get a different player that might fit better with their roster. So that's where I could see Keegan Murray possibly getting moved, and I think he would fit tremendously on the Sixers team. I know he's not shooting well right now, but he's a real threat from out there. be a much-needed addition to this starting five.
Yeah, Keegan Murray, a player with some draft pedigree. He was the 4th overall pick by the Kings in 2022. And another player with some draft pedigree just outside the lottery, Tari Eason of the Houston Rockets. He was taken 17th overall in the 2022 draft out of LSU. This is a forward who's very long, very athletic. And this year for the Rockets, I think one of the better up-and-coming teams in the NBA with some talent on that roster. Ime Udoka as their head coach, you know he's not going to take any shit. 12.2 points per game and almost 23 minutes per, 5.5 rebounds, 55% from the floor, 36.5% from three. And then you look at the steals and blocks, 1.8 steals per game, 1.2 blocks. With that length and that athleticism, he's a really good player on the defensive side of the floor. What he would bring the Sixers here, high-level defensive forward who is always active, always engaged on offense. He's a smart cutter, and he's an efficient player. And this Bleacher Report trade idea would bring Philadelphia Tari Eason, but also Cam Whitmore, the Villanova product, who was a huge recruit for the Villanova Wildcats back a few years ago. The Rockets would receive KJ Martin, a 2026 first from Philadelphia, by way of Houston, OKC, and the Clippers, and then that 2028 first. So Tari Eason, another player, like the Kings, might be on the outside looking in just because of how crowded that roster is.
Yeah, their roster, you said it, it's very crowded with young players. Of course, Tari Eason in there. They just paid Jalen Green. They paid Alfred Sengun. They still have Fred VanVleet, Dylan Brooks in the roster making a good amount of money. And then they have these two young forwards with Tari Eason and with Jabari Smith Jr., who are both going to be looking for contracts soon. Both have 2 years left on their deal, including this year. They simply won't have the money to pay everybody, right? And ideally, I think the Rockets would say, okay, well, let's package some of these guys together and go get a star. But if that star doesn't turn out, and again, we get closer to the trade deadline, they could say, all right, we don't really have the assets right now and enough picks to go get that star. Let's get, especially that 2028 Clippers first from the Sixers, I think is a very, very valuable asset that a lot of teams would covet. So we'll get that pick, move off Eason. We don't want to pay him eventually anyways. And then the Sixers, man, Tari Eason on this team, he would be a dog. He has been tremendous to start this season. And if he can shoot 36, 38% from three to go along with everything else he does on the floor, he would also be a perfect starting four for this team next to Paul George, Joel Embiid. And I'd be totally cool paying him long-term whatever money he'd be asking for because he's just one of those glue guys that I think every championship contender really, really needs.
No doubt, yeah. And these are young players, too, who are very intriguing, who you think about how the Sixers team is compiled right now. They do have some veterans, Jared McCain, Tyrese Maxey, younger players, though, maybe some core pieces, and I think the Sixers could get a little bit more athletic as well. So with that, I want you to chime in. Name a player that the 76ers should trade for. We have 2 more trade targets to get to here coming up. But first, thanks to DraftKings for making today's 76ers now possible. We want them to be a partner here at Chat Sports for a very long time. You can help make that happen by using the promo code SixersChat. The Emirates NBA Cup is here. You can win big getting in on the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. All 30 teams split into 6 groups every Tuesday and Friday playing for the right to advance in the single elimination in-season tourney, culminating in the NBA Cup Championship in Vegas. First time here, here's something special just for you. New DraftKings customers bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Score big with DraftKings Sportsbook. Every point counts. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code SixersChat. That's code SixersChat for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, Kansas. 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/bball. Another great performance from rookie Jared McCain. He nearly single-handedly carried the Sixers to a win over the undefeated Cleveland Cavaliers, and with that, he is now the odds-on favorite to win Rookie of the Year at plus 350, thanks to our friends at DraftKings. You have Zachary Reese-Sachet plus 425, Zach Edey plus 475, and Carlton Carrington at 7-1. Jared McCain's looking like the best player in this rookie class. So if you like the value there, you believe that Jared McCain could win Rookie of the Year, plus 350. Not bad. Lines and odds. Subject to change. Use that code Sixers Chat. Get $200 instantly in bonus bets. Trade target number 3 is another player on the Houston Rockets, and a player who I loved coming out of Auburn. He was actually my number 1 player on my big board, as at the time I was doing a lot of NBA draft analysis here at Chat Sports, and the numbers really haven't translated or taken off like I thought they would. He was a 40+% three-point shooter while at Auburn, and I thought that he was going to be able to figure that handle out and be a problem at the NBA level. Good athlete, long, good shooting stroke, but as you can see, so far in his NBA career, he hasn't been able to get over 36% from 3. The points per game numbers really just okay. The field goal numbers not terrible, but I thought that he was going to be much more efficient this year, averaging 10.5, nearly 7 boards. So he's a well-rounded player who can contribute in a multitude of ways, but that handle is still an issue, and the shooting stroke continues to be inconsistent. What he brings you, still very young, and does have that draft pedigree from being that former 3rd overall pick. He's 6'11", and I do think that he can shoot. He just hasn't been able to shoot at a high clip yet. He can also rebound and switch. On the perimeter, his contract, pretty interesting, pretty affordable when you think about some of these contracts that are being handed out to NBA players who don't have the potential of Jabari Smith. $9.7 million this year, $12.3 million in 2025-2026. Where do you stand on Smith here, Chip?
So you said it, potential, right? This is a very intriguing option because he has a very, very high ceiling, and I liked him a lot coming out of the draft as well. Just has not been able to put it all together. He looked a little bit better last year, but just really has struggled this season. And, as I mentioned with Tari Eason, they're going to have to make a decision. I think they trade one of those 2 guys, right? At this moment in time, if I'm the Rockets, I'm probably keeping Eason. He's a lower maintenance player on offense, doesn't need the ball to impact the game, whereas Jabari Smith does. So if he becomes available, I'd be interested. Again, still so young. And if he can fulfill that ceiling, that high ceiling that he still does have, because he's still so young, man, with his shooting ability, his size, he can rebound the ball well. He's a very versatile player. And if you're willing to pay him, if he does show a little bit, man, again, this is a guy that I think could be a top 3 scoring option on a team if he does get up to 38+% from 3 and is able to use that length and size to score inside. So I'd be willing to give up, in all these trades, again, you're pretty much giving up KJ Martin for the salary. Ricky Council probably, I'm not as, I was excited for him coming into the year, but he hasn't gotten out to a strong start, not a lot of playing time. But again, another player at that 4 spot that just brings you something that I don't think the Sixers really have right now, especially if you can get that shot underway.
No doubt. And I'm just waiting for that shot to come around. Let me check his age right here because he's still an extremely young player. And I'm a believer in the ability, 21 years old. So you're banking on this guy to be able to turn the corner at some point. And we've seen some of these developmental stories take some time. But when I saw him at Auburn, the corner 3, he had it down. Even that, dribble pull-up 3, he was able to connect on those shots. 40+% his final year at Auburn. I'm just kind of confounded why it hasn't really translated from an efficiency standpoint. Trade target number 4, Bennedict Mathurin, another player out of Arizona who I really like coming out of the draft. I like 3 of these 4 players in the pre-draft process. I was a little bit uneven on Tari Eason, but he went 17th overall, so it's not like he was a lottery pick. He's actually ended up exceeding my expectations, and Bennedict Mathurin has turned into a really solid player, kind of a breakout year that he's having right now in 2024-2025 under head coach Rick Carlisle, who, as we know, has done a good job of developing some of these ball handlers and guards. And Mathurin has always been a really good athlete, can really run the floor. The shooting stroke was a little bit worrisome while at Arizona, but look at these numbers this year. Almost 20 points per, 6.5 rebounds, 53+% from the field, 46.5% from three-point range. John Hollinger of The Athletic on him. The 2022 lottery pick enters his third year in an uncertain role. However, after the Pacers made a run to the conference finals without him last spring, Mathurin missed the postseason with the torn labrum suffered in March, but his minutes had already been declining before that injury due to the ascent of Nembhard and the arrival of Pascal Siakam. Well, now you're looking at a player who's starting to break out a little bit. This is another shot creator, and the Sixers desperately need that shot creator. Again, is Jared McCain becoming that shot creator? I think he is, and I think that Nick Nurse is going to be put into a corner where he's going to have to play Jared McCain and Tyrese Maxey, finding ways to make it work. I also like how Benny Maths plays with competitive fire. And his contract next 2 years, 2024-2025, $7.2 million, and in 2025-2026, $9.1 million. With all of these players, I think these organizations, Chip, look at them, and one of the words that we've used, young, a lot of potential. They know that, but they're also on some teams where there might not be a clearly defined role for them, because those organizations, to their credit, have done a good job of stacking up some talent on those squads.
Yeah, and all these players going to have to be paid after the end of next season. So these teams got to start coming to decisions sooner rather than later whether or not they want to pay big money to keep these guys on their teams. And that's why the Sixers can swoop in this trade deadline and say, you know what? We're already paying so much money to our roster. We're all in. We'll trade these picks for a guy and move into the second apron for someone that can move the needle. And for someone like Mathurin, very interesting case. Of course, as we mentioned, the Pacers went to the conference finals last year without him. So now starting the season, he wasn't starting for them to start the year. It was Aaron Nesmith, who played very well for them last year. Nesmith got hurt. Mathurin then was inserted in the starting lineup. And ever since then, it's been about 4 or 5 games he's been starting. He has been on a heater. I mean, you saw his numbers.
Yeah.
45% from 3.
Yeah.
He's been awesome for them, right? But now what if they feel like, as Nesmith eventually comes back, maybe Mathurin has played himself into a position where they can get more than they ever imagined they could for him in a trade, and they say, hey, we already made it far last year without this guy on the team. We can get all these picks for him because, they don't have a lot of picks because they traded him over Pascal Siakam. So if they want to reload, get these picks from the Sixers for a player whose value is extremely, extremely high right now, might never be higher as we move along in the season, and then they can use those picks to go get another star to add to that roster, could be an avenue for them, especially if they are confident with players like Andrew Nembhard and Aaron Nesmith can provide for them. Jarris Walker, a young forward they have on that roster. So again, another player, they're going to decide if they want to pay. If they don't, Sixers, I think, will be very smart to go make a move for someone like him.
It's pretty crazy with how the Sixers have played since that win. It's amazing that they were able to beat the Indiana Pacers in overtime thanks to Tyrese Maxey's heroics. And, man, once this team gets it together, I like the makeup of it, but you know that Daryl Morey might be looking at some of these trade targets to try to make a move. So name a player that the 76ers should trade for. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to drop that name down in the comment section, hit that sub button, and have a great weekend.